You're listening to 4CRB's interviews and talkback series.
Well, very good morning to retired. Retired? Are you still retired? No, you're not. The Supreme Court Judge David Ashton Lewis. You wish you were. You were coughing and holding the cough mute, so no one heard what you said.
At times I think I should be retired. Why have I not retired? But then when I see some of my retired colleagues and I see that they can play enough rounds of golf, but they still are just at a loose end. So I'm glad that I'm not retired.
You've got to retire to something. You've got to have a focus and something to do and something to do in your life. No matter whether you're retired, whether you're working, you've got to have an outlet.
Yeah, I think that's right. And you could make that outlet doing what you did for 40, 50 years, but not be under a time clock, not be under, as if you were doing it every day for a salary. You can do it at your own pace, your own time. You can either do it charitably or you can do it for, as I do in a number of things, I do a lot of speaking. And because since being in remission and having no taste, I tend to be given a bottle of wine. And that loosens your tongue, does it? Said that I don't want bottles of wine, I want bottles of whiskey.
Right.
Because that's the only drink, as you know, that deals with that metallic taste in the mouth. And so, and then you look at some very well-heeled organisations, I won't name them, and who are cheapskates. I got a 500ml demonstration bottle of the cheapest whiskey, and then you'll go to another one and I'll speak, and most of these people are listeners to you and I on 4CRB, and they will give me a really nice bottle of whiskey. So we're all different, aren't we, and I don't complain. And as I was speaking just then, I think to some of these speaking groups, you should come too, because I do get a lot of comment about you and the show, about Colin and myself. And I get asked, what's Colin like? Oh, Colin sounds really good. So I say, what is Colin like? A most likeable man.
I would have thought you'd say a pain in the posterior.
No, when I say, some have said to me, he sounds very learned. And I'll say, well, he is. I'm with him.
Oh, that's terrible.
That is arrogant. No,
all right, we started a conversation this week, and we were talking about a great many things. I think we started with Donald Trump, who offered to $1 million to a charity if Joe Biden's charity, if Joe Biden wins the next election.
If he wins it, or if he steps down?
No, if he wins it, he'll pay. He will pay $1 million to Joe Biden's charity of choice.
Just on that topic before we start, isn't it sad that a man who appears to be completely losing grip in his speech and in his cognitive functioning, we're hearing all these reports, he's just brilliant, he is just with it all the time, and he's got a grasp on everything, when the clear evidence is that he appears not to have. And if that's right, should he be the President of the United States?
Let me pose this, David.
Yes.
I would imagine that in your younger years, as you were studying, you were learning, you were developing your thinking and the person who you are or you've ended up being. But then as you've gone through the years and you've had a cancer scare, and that's you've had a number of medications that have affected your memory at times, although it's coming back. It's affected your voice, your taste. And we noted here, we're just with our volunteers and looking at what they're able to deal with, and as they slowly go through their ageing journey, we can see that they can deal with less and less, or more and more, or they don't really change. And I usually find the fitter people, the people who continue doing sport and are very active, hold on to their cognitive ability, especially if you're using your mind. But you do note that they are slowing down from time to time. they would come back with an answer very, very quickly in their 40s and 50s, and then as they get into their 70s and 80s, they might think on it for a few moments before they answer.
Well, that's a funny one, because sometimes they'd come back quick as a flash in their 40s,
yes,
and they'd be wrong.
Sure.
Because they're too quick. Sometimes coming back or taking more time to cogitate and think about something, rather than being a sign of aging, cognitive decline,
yes,
it's a sign of, you finally got wisdom, you've learned.
Potentially.
But I'm not moving away. I think the majority of what you say is in fact correct. That, look, I know in my own life, I'm still competent. I can still write very difficult Supreme Court judgments that take a lot of time, but I can do them quicker.
Sure.
When I was a man in my 30s and 40s, when I first went onto the bench, when I was 42, I agonised and took forever. Now I find that I can do those difficult matters in 3-4 days.
Because you're practiced.
Because you've done it.
Yes.
But again, everything you're saying is right. And so it's the challenge, isn't it, of passing through your ages.
It's still a balance of, is he competent, is he not competent? And again, if people aren't answering as quickly as they used to, or as smartly, or as on the topic as fast as they normally would, is that something that really should be taken into consideration?
But that's why we have testing for cognitive decline. Now, I noticed that Joe Biden has declined to be tested. And when you hold the office of the president, and he's really the president of the democratic world, he's really our president in one way, I think there should be some requirement that annually, if you're a president over the age of 75, annually you should be tested.
Yes.
Because you can't afford the luxury of having someone you like, or the leader of the party you like, or a good bloke in office. They've got to show that they can do it.
They actually deserve to be there and mean to be there, and actually will get a result being there. I agree with you. And again, often the thought process here is that if there's nothing wrong, why would you decline the testing?
Exactly.
So that's
and then let's
issue.
move to the other candidate, Donald Trump.
Is there a test for a megalomaniac?
Well, we can use all these different terms. He's been shown to be a man fairly loose with the truth.
Sure.
He's been shown to be a man fairly loose in the treatment of other people, and particularly women. And he's been shown to be, I think, not an intellectual man. And I'm told that, from my reading, that all the money he's worth was from his father. I'm sure he's done things.
He's built on it.
Yeah, he's built on it. But character. Let's say he's been shown to have a character that many would find a bad character. So here you've got two men seeking to become the leaders of the free world, and for all of what we've talked about, Joe Biden and Trump, are they fit for the job?
And that is the battle. And again, have we got developed testing? I've worked with narcissists, and he seems to me to be that type of person that I'm not wrong, the rest of the world is.
Yes.
And that's a very dangerous attitude. I can never be wrong, you just ask me.
Yes.
Those sort of concerns.
Yes.
And you see that in the way he governed the last time. I'm going to do exactly what I want to do, whether you can.
We did see it. Now, but you've got to be careful. These are democracies, and at last count, evidently, there's about 70+ million people who will vote for him.
Okay, so let's take that discussion. We often talk about Nazi Germany and the rise of Adolf Hitler, and we look at communism, which is a different model. Yes, Adolf Hitler got voted into power. His party were voted in, and Germany wanted a change, and the world was plunged into the most horrendous war based on that.
And
so if
he
you
was
say
a
democracy,
megalomaniac. He believed that he was right and that everyone else was wrong.
Yes.
He believed that his vision was legitimate, other visions were flawed, and as you said, he destroyed his country. Well, he wasn't even German.
And a number of other countries around the world.
And a number of other countries. And 68 million people died.
So the question here is, with the benefit of hindsight, with the benefit of history, we can say, well, this is terrible, this could never happen again. How do you test that? Because potentially, if 70 million people or 700 million people are going to vote Donald Trump in, or
70 million.
are potentially going to vote him into power, and he turns out to be that type of person.
Well, this is
very difficult, isn't it?
Yep, this is where, and it might segue into the education thing we're going to speak of. This is where the Cicero principle comes in looking at Putin at the moment, looking at Trump. How many of you have bothered to learn about what happened before you were born? And that if you don't bother to learn about what happened before you were born, you're convicted to remain intellectually a child. Now, all the people who didn't grow up under Adolf Hitler, all the people who didn't grow up under Soviet socialism, all the people who haven't been under that, you should have been reading and learning about it so that you can draw parallels with Putin and Hitler, and you draw parallels with Trump.
Look, it's funny, isn't it? I've been part of some discussions of late that sort of insinuate that socialism is on the rise here by stealth. And I thought, okay, let's listen to this. And then, look, often it does happen this way. Once upon a time, and I think it was the 80s or the 90s, we had the rise of an idea of an Australia card. We're going to get an Australia card, and everything's going to be registered under that, and we'll be able to know exactly what's going on with you medically, and we know what's going on with you financially, and the ATO will know all these wonderful things.
When you would say to those people, why do you want to know all that?
Well, it got voted down basically resoundingly, but now we have MyGov, and the ATO is linked, and Medicare is linked, and all of those things are linked. If we look at the super clearinghouse, they've got the ATO know exactly how much money you're being paid. If we actually look at the PAYG payment system, the ATO know exactly how much you're being paid. Now we move on to cash and checks. And hang on a minute. So cash is probably the easiest way for you to be very private in what you do and what you spend your money on. Now, if that is to disappear in the near future, which we're talking about, we now have a system where the government knows exactly what you're doing. I've spent some time with insurance companies and credit ratings of late, and the amount of things that they look at now if you actually want to apply for credit, they want to see the last 6 months of your transactions on your account and see how many times you buy coffee and how much disposable income you're using and what sort of spending habits you have. Are you frivolous or are you a miser?
In other words, none of their business that they want to know it.
But sure, we won't lend you the money unless we have a look.
And you see, look, there's a balance has to be here. Like, I was speaking to someone who's very much of the left, a 67-year-old man, over the last week, just a complete Labor voter. The left is where the future is. The left are the masters of justice, equity, fairness, and inclusion. And it came on, the topic came on.
The left are the masters of fairness, equity and inclusion.
Justice, equity, fairness and inclusion.
Right.
Jeffy's, J-E-F-I, Jeffy. And so someone raised Julian Assange, and he just said, absolute hero of a man. He should never have gone through everything. And when I said, so he was authorised, was he, to publish abroad the information, I didn't say justified, he was authorised to do all this and put the Five Eyes, that's UK, Canada, US, Australia and New Zealand, intelligence, which they share, to put that into jeopardy, but whilst at the same time not touching Russian intelligence or Chinese. And the conversation went on, and really it boiled down, he was a hero because he did that. And I said, but there are laws saying you can't do that. Well, he should just disobey those laws. So you're justifying anyone can disobey a law they don't agree with, and you can. We're free to do it. Yeah. You can drive at 160 or 200 kilometres an hour down the Pacific Highway. And if you don't get caught, well, fine. But if you get caught, you're going to go nowhere if you start arguing with the Highway Patrol. But that's my right.
Yes. So.
And they'll say, well, no, it's not, because you, that is you collectively, in a parliament, have passed a law saying a maximum of 110 kilometres. And this person who is intelligent could not pick up on that, could not pick up that in a society under the rule of law, law is made by us.
Yes.
And so whether you agreed and thought Julian Assange was a hero, he broke the law.
Sure.
And he was not authorised to do that, and because of the weeping heart saying 14 years imprisonment is enough.
Yes.
And then saying, but he never faced imprisonment for the crime that he committed, because he spent 14 years fighting extradition and staying out of the way of the law.
Yes. Look, a lot of the people who have said to me, oh, he's a hero, he's this, he's that, he's everything else. So why was he justified in doing what he did? And when it actually boils down to it, I get this statement, well, there shouldn't be any secrets.
Oh, yes.
Ooh.
I got that.
Yes, and that's a dangerous game to play. If the other side is allowed secrets and you're not allowed any at all, how is that ever meant to work?
Yes.
Because there are sides here. People will say, no, we're one world, and yes, they have a different ideology, but they're not really threatening us. Oh, yes, they are.
Oh, yes.
So I'd like to hear your thoughts there on that one,
no,
that there shouldn't be any secret.
Well, given the nature of man, and given the differing and chauvinistic political systems, we lived from 1945 to 1990 with socialism and with capitalism. And they were both chauvinistic, both great believers in the superiority of their system. Now, governments decide that not everything should be open, because giving away your secrets, that person who said that said, so the US should go openly publish the workings of the nuclear reactors that they have in the Virginia-class submarine, and just publishing everything, because it is reputed to be the most silent of all submarines.
Sure.
And that evidently the Russian ones are quite noisy. But the Russians will choose not to be open, fine. There should be no secrets, we're one world. But the problem is there are secrets, and there has to be secrets. And a democratic government makes that decision. But this speaker I was talking to in the last week was the same as what yours was. There should be no secrets, and it's a hero who releases it.
Look, and it's also funny, it's the rise of what we see in social media and see on the television to a point. Television was the start of all things in this respect. But social media now, instead of us looking at right and wrong, and if we even think of back to the early days of television, we watched the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote, and the good guy won every time.
Yes.
And that was just the lesson that we were putting forward. Nowadays, social media is more not what's right or wrong or what's going on in the real world. It's what's funny and what's popular.
Yes.
And often at times that's not the right thing to do. And people are going, oh, isn't that funny? Because we're just watching a screen and it doesn't seem to have any sort of effect on anyone else because that's what we see.
Well, certainly our tastes and our values over my lifetime have certainly changed. When I look at what and if we put aside girls and rock music and all that, what I and my age group were interested in in the 1970s
Sure.
is and we're in our 20s then, is very different to what 20-year-olds are interested in today. So the measure is not to turn the clock back and you be like us. No, the measure is you be 20 now, but don't throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Right and wrong is constant, though.
Well,
to
that's
me,
right.
whether it's when you were 20 or when I was 20 or whether our children are 20.
Some things never change over millennia.
Sure.
And so there needs to be balance in the current generation and balance in the older generation. You can't put old heads on young shoulders, so they say, and you can't put young heads on older shoulders. So there has to be an understanding of the differences in cultural values, social values, economic values, and they have to be understood differently. But if keeping it in the topic we're speaking on, and when you're in an open society, far more open than is dictatorial societies, we still, although we're open, you cannot open everything because culture is chauvinistic.
Yes.
Governance is chauvinistic. Our way is the best. Our way is the best. And back and forth it goes. And for one group to say, you're going to see everything, the other group will say, what fools, thank you very much.
Yes, that's right. So, look, I try and ignore the Julian Assange thing because I often see people saying that isn't he wonderful, isn't he this, isn't he everything else. Look, at the end of the day, he did the wrong thing in the beginning to start with.
He did.
And that was the way it was. If you want to look into the ramifications of what he did, supposedly people died from the information that he released. Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? All because we shouldn't have secrets?
No.
No.
Just the nature of man means we're not all good.
No.
And therefore there has to be some things that are clandestine and secretive. Now you hope that in our type of society the clandestine and secretive things are for making good, whereas in dictatorships like Hitler's Germany and
to a point, Putin's Russia.
Yeah, Putin's Russia, Xi Jinping's China, they're secretive, and I don't know enough, I can only go by press, but they're secretive, not for necessarily the benefit of all.
No, that's correct, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we were going to be talking about education, but we're not getting anywhere near it, David. We're on politics one more time. So,
well, yes. Look,
do you know a little bit about American politics?
Yeah.
Biden's under pressure to step aside.
Yes.
We're in the middle of an election race, I believe. Is it November this year that they go to the polls?
The first Tuesday in November, which I think is November the 4th.
So how does that bode for the Democrats if they change candidates now?
Well, if they're going to do it, they will have to do it now, so that candidate will have enough time to impress the people, the democratic voting people in the United States. And certain names have been put up: the current governor of California, the current governor of Michigan, which was a woman, Gretchen Whitmer. Now, I've heard her speak on a number of occasions, and she is very eloquent and very good, and she has qualities of leadership. I've also heard the governor of California speak. He's a 52-year-old man, father of, I think, 5 or 6 children, handsome-looking man, Gavin Newsom, but he's a very woke man. He's a very liberal, progressive, and so there's 2 good candidates, depending on who you like. Some are saying that Michelle Obama should stand. I don't think she would have. She was a professor of law at, I think, Harvard. She's no dill, but and this is only again personal, Gretchen Whitmer I'd have in a blink. Newsom, yes, he's a well-spoken, well-presented man. and he's got a record of good governorship in California. But Michelle Obama I would not support, and definitely the current vice president, as I heard one comment, New York Times. Now, it's a left-leaning paper, say all she ever talks about is race and gender. So how can you produce a unified nation
Yes.
if all she can talk about, and, because she's the first black vice president, well, she's of Indian Caribbean descent.
And again, what does it matter what colour you are? What does it matter whether you're a male or a female? Isn't it the good of the country?
But if you're going to talk constantly about race and gender and not hear anything on world issues, and I've heard her a couple of times speak, and she's quite embarrassing with lack of knowledge.
Yes, okay. All right, and summing up our little discussion today, David, we started on let's say megalomaniacs and the rise thereof.
Look, summing up is we must never lose, interest in what's good for all, not just for one.
Yes.
And we must also remember that there is responsibilities in leadership that Julian Assange, in my opinion, didn't show, and that Biden is not showing, and Donald Trump cannot show. So we're talking about character and qualities in leadership.
And it's a very good topic to highlight. I'll be honest, I mentioned this to a number of people and some friends of mine who say, look, I don't care anymore. I'm sick of our politicians. Yes. I'm sick of their politicians. They're all lunatics and don't seem to be doing the right thing. But it is your country. It is our country. And if you don't take notice, if you don't take an interest, if you don't get behind and actually say, hey, I want change, we could end up being a communist state. We could end up being having a megalomaniac.
How many of those people, I put myself in this, how many of those people have semi-regular meetings with their local member and politely but firmly demand better behaviour in the parliament?
And that's exactly
because
what it
we
should
don't do it, because we are really a spoilt country, we live well.
Yes.
We turn out and vote every 3 years or 4 years if it's state. Say to them, you get on with it, and then we moan and complain.
Indeed.
Yeah.
All right, David Ashton-Lewis, thank you very much for your time this morning.
As always, Colin, thank you. And to Lynn and to Somerset, I've remembered you at the end rather than at the beginning, so to all the others whose names we don't know, thank you.
You've been listening to 4CRB's interviews and talkback series. Support local online content and become a financial supporter today at 4crb.com.